he was not easy. We asked of him the other night to travel, land, and play, but sometimes it's the easiest way to integrate players is just get them on the field. And that was an attempt the other night, and I think it was just fine. So for those purposes, that was successful. And we will add moving forward. Today was his first full training session with the group, tomorrow as well, and then a match again on Sunday. So anytime you add players and players move to the stage of the season, it's always going to be quick integrations. So players used to it, we're used to it. Don't see that as an obstacle. You know, the game the other night result was obviously disappointing. Performance was okay. We created a lot of chances. Those games, those results don't always. I should say this. Will not happen very often. Hit the post, crossbar twice, post once. Keeper makes some big saves. We were creating a lot of chances, so our football was improved. The final product, maybe not as great as we had hoped, but I know enough about this game to understand if we keep playing like that, we will win games. And so, physically, we came out okay. One yellow card suspension, moving into Salt Lake. Kellen is suspended. Other than that, we are in a good position. The only injury would be Franco Escobar. Other than that, things are just fine, and we're prepared for Salt Lake. Oof. Would you define moving pieces, please?
With the players that left, the players that are coming in, like Denis, having to be thrown into that integration situation right away, same as like the other players.
The starting lineup in Houston, I believe, there's only one new player, Giorgio. So I'm not sure that's a valid reason for speed bumps. I think it's natural in a long season, especially after successful runs. The good thing about this team is it's a team of trends. And so when you're trending positive and you're doing little things right, results will also trend positive. We stopped doing things right against DC, notably in the second half. Carried on to San Jose, corrected a few things, forgot to run in Austin, and corrected that in Houston. And to be fair and honest, we just were a bit unlucky and with our finishing and with the officiating. But our performance was pretty good in Houston, good enough to win for sure. And we will be fine against Real Salt Lake.
A little bit more on that, like not talking about the officiating and not being lucky in that sense. Are you comfortable with what you've seen going into Sunday's game, and that this team, because of the chances that they keep creating, will be back on that positive trend?
I am very confident.
I don't want to insult your players' intelligence because I know they know what 3 losses means, but your philosophy on pressure, because like you said, you didn't play so well in San Jose. Austin was one thing, but the trend is where, if a ball goes in, we're not talking about 3 losses, but what's your philosophy on insulating them from pressure, or do you allow it to keep it on them at this time of year? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's very important to isolate results and performances, the two things, and to separate them. And if the performance isn't the way we want it to be in certain phases, you identify the problem, you go out and train and fix the problem, and you try to apply those rules and lessons or principles in the following match. That we've been doing over the past 3 weeks, and we feel very comfortable where we are now moving into Salt Lake. So to answer your question, we are focused on our performances and the reasons why we're not performing in certain parts of the game like we should be performing, and we are correcting those, and we have addressed everything, and we have seen improvements, and the last one was made today in training.
Is there any correlation between having less training time? I mean, obviously you get tired legs from multiple games of the week, but you have less time with these guys out on the pitch. Is there any correlation in this little bit of a downturn with that inability to have as much training time?
I'm not sure. I think Sometimes having games right away is a quick way to get out of a negative trend, at least results. I think all it means is you have less time to prepare players physically. But tactically, I think we're in a place, this was our 29th game, or this will be our 29th game. We can work with very little time and work effectively because we have such a big base and foundation to go off of anyway. So we didn't need a whole lot today. We needed 12 minutes, and we accomplished what we want to accomplish on the training field. And that you can only do at this stage in the season. So I'm not sure that's a factor either.
What was still being addressed today? Is that something that can be shared? What was being addressed?
Yeah, a little bit of our defensive posture in the phase where you don't have the ball. Just some general positioning reminders of players, stuff we have done before. But this is a game of habits, and hopefully good habits. And sometimes you get away from those habits, and we will just remind players and put them in positions and expose certain things in training to remind them of those good habits. And that's how we did today.
Playing with three center backs, like we saw, and having Georgia in the mix, but also having the ability to switch, is that something that you're going to be looking for? Just like having both systems, or just you like one more than the other?
We've only played with three center backs twice this season. We can, if need be, but we prefer to play with four in the back.
Got one here for broadcast. You've got a little bit of quirk in the schedule: 3 road games and this home game against Salt Lake, and then back out on the road for 2. Do you try to put any more extra emphasis on this home game in the sense of a game you have to win as opposed to some of these road games?
No, it's always the next game. We've been doing that the entire season. Maybe we got a little bit away for that for the past couple of weeks, but for me, the only thing that matters is Salt Lake. But in other words, I have no idea who we're playing after that.
All right.
I will take questions
I
from
know,
Zoom,
right.
starting with Jonathan.
Pretending not to know.
Awesome. Hi, Steve. This is Jonathan Siegel from MLSoccer.com. I wanted to ask you, because we just talked with John about it. There is some reports of interest in Jose Cifuentes throughout the transfer window. Of course, he stays with you all for a bit now. What's your perspective on his growth as a player, his potential? We're coming into a potential World Cup for him with Ecuador. I believe John called him one of the most talented midfielders in Major League Soccer. As his coach, what's your viewpoint on just kind of his growth and what's in store?
Sky's the limits for Sifu. He's, as John said, he's one of the most talented players in the league, midfielders in the league. I would second that. He's in control of his own destiny. It can be a very exciting time for him moving forward. He knows what we expect of him, and he's been able to produce those performances quite frequently this year. So I'm very interested to see how he finishes the year. But if he can in the same fashion as he started, or predominantly most of the season, I think it's an excellent season by Sifu, especially from his age, who showed maturity, which I think is the most important for a midfielder at that age, is to play well consistently and not just have a great game and then poor and then a great and poor. So I think we've seen a nice step in maturity in his game this year. He's not doing anything different than he did last year, but I think there's a little more maturity there.
And secondarily, apologies if this was asked before, there were some audio troubles on the Zoom, so it was a little hard to hear. Denny Buanga, you guys got him a short run out against Houston. Of course, hoping to build on that. What are your expectations for him as a player? Can you walk us through how he fits into this attack? I know you like options up there and not leaning on one guy necessarily, but people are wondering, hey, how does this guy fit into the broader picture here for LAFC?
I think we've been clear all season. Our front three can be and should be fluid, interchangeable in each position. Of course, with Chicho, you have more of a 9 than you do a winger. But the other wingers can play inside. Carlos, Gareth, even Denis can play inside. And so it should be very fluid and interchangeable. And the only thing we ask of our attackers is to get on the end of chances, score goals, and initiate our pressing and our defensive structure. The same would go for Denis, as I asked from the other 5 attackers, and when Christian is available as well, for him as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Josh Gross.
Yeah, thank you. Steve, on the pressing aspect of what Denis may bring you, would you say that's a strength of his? Do you think he sort of fits right into what you guys want to do in terms of repossessing the ball?
Absolutely.
How so? And is he more equipped to do that than some of the other options you have, or how would you see him fitting in?
You said it better than I can say it. So I mean, his attributes are he's linear, he's mobile, he's fast, he's physically built as well for challenges, to win battles against center backs and outside backs. He comes from that environment, understands that model, and so we're looking in Denis to be a handful with and without the ball.
And just in terms of how you can use him, is he coming in fully ready to go? Do you see him as a guy who could go 90 minutes right now if you wanted him to do that?
I think 90 minutes may be a stretch, but he is naturally a fit athlete, and that plays into our hands, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Next question from Ryan Wallerson.
Hi, Steve. Good afternoon. You've talked about Denis extensively from an offensive standpoint, but you've also spoken extensively about the responsibilities of attackers from a defensive standpoint. Can you just talk about the defensive responsibilities that you expect from Denis, and if they're any different from any of the other attackers that you currently manage?
No. We ask the same of each player. And to answer your question, it depends on where we are in the field. Higher up the field, of course, it's an attempt to win the ball, so the intensity of your press would be higher, and the positioning would be differently. But if you're further back in your field, defending in a deeper block, the way asks of something different. So that becomes more about positioning and putting yourself in a good spot when we do recover the ball. So it depends on where you are in the field, what exactly we exact of him, but all of our attackers know exactly what we want in each portion of the field, and the responsibilities remain the same no matter who's out in the field.
And just a quick follow-up, speaking of Denis specifically, from the tape that you've seen from training, how well does he track back naturally and from his own experience, and how much will that be bringing him up to speed to LAFC style of play?
We've taken him through video and put him on the training field, and we've had a few video sessions, team sessions outside of the individual one for him, and so I think there's plenty of information for him to understand what we ask of him, and he's been playing at a very high level his entire life. We're not asking anything different than his previous clubs and coaches, so he's well prepared. Now it's just a matter of the small details of getting to know your teammates, and the only way to do that is time on the field, so that will come naturally. I don't anticipate him needing a lot of time to get caught up, and like I said earlier, his natural and physical attributes are right up our alley as far as the game model goes, so he should fit in nicely.
Thank you, Coach.
Mm-hmm.